What if everything you believe about who you are is only half the story? What if the person you show the world, the achiever, the dreamer, the perfectionist, the rebel, is just a mask? In this video, you won't be handed tips or quick fixes. You'll be invited into something deeper. A descent into the unconscious, a confrontation with the shadow. A return to the self, because the ego you've built is not your truth, it's a barrier. And behind it, your real life is waiting to begin. The ego is not yourself. It is a mask you mistook for a face, a temporary shelter. You mistook for a home. It is the story you were told repeated until it became your voice. But listen closely, and you will feel the trembling of something deeper beneath it, a silent watching presence that does not speak in words, but in symbols, in dreams, in gut feelings, in strange synchronicities. That is the self. Not the image you show the world, not the voice you defend, not even the thoughts you believe to be your own. The self is the silent architect of your becoming, and it has been waiting for you to remember. The tragedy of our time is that we have confused survival with identity. We think we are the accumulation of habits, likes, traumas, and goals. We wrap ourselves in personas polished and performative, hoping to be seen, to be validated, to belong. But the persona was never meant to be your truth. It was meant to be a bridge to what, to whom? To the one you forgot, the one buried beneath layers of social masks and inherited fears. You wear a face to be loved, but the real you longs to be revealed. What we call the ego is only a small light in the vast cathedral of the unconscious. It is the flame we cling to in the dark, afraid that if it goes out, we will disappear. But what if the darkness isn't the end? What if the darkness is the womb? What if it holds not death, but rebirth? Carl Jung understood this. He walked into the abyss, not to escape it, but to find the self hidden inside it. And this is what we must do if we are to be whole. You were not born to live on the surface. You were born to dive. The unconscious is not your enemy. It is your origin. It carries the memories of your ancestors, of the myths of humanity, the archetypes that shaped our civilizations and dreams. When you dream of falling, of flying, of drowning, it is not nonsense. It is the language of the soul trying to speak in symbols because words are too small. And in that language, your shadow speaks. The shadow is not evil. It is not to be destroyed. It is simply the part of you that you were told to disown. Your rage, your desire, your shame, your hunger, your brilliance. All the things that did not fit in the mask were cast into the basement of your being, but they did not die. They waited, and now they knock at the door of your dreams. They whisper in the chaos of your emotions. They erupt in moments of crisis. You fear your shadow because you have not met it. You judge it because you do not understand it. But the shadow is the key to transformation. What you repress becomes distorted, and what you face becomes integrated. And when the shadow is brought into the light of consciousness, it becomes fuel for the journey toward wholeness. You cannot become who you truly are without meeting who you have truly been. This is not a gentle process. The path of individuation is not self-improvement. It is self-confrontation. It is the tearing down of everything false, the burning of old identities, the death of illusion. And yet, this death is sacred. It is the alchemical fire that turns lead into gold. The crucible where the fragmented soul is reforged. You will lose your old name, but you will gain your true voice. You will lose the comfort of certainty, but you will gain the compass of inner truth. The ego resists this, of course. It clings. It defends. It rationalizes. It does not want to die. But the self does not want to kill it. The self wants to integrate it. The ego is the servant, not the master. When the servant bows to the greater self, harmony is born. When it tries to rule, chaos ensues. You see this every day in the fear of change, in the addiction to validation, in the obsession with image. These are not signs of power. They are signs of disconnection. To walk the path Jung spoke of is to step beyond that disconnection. It is to walk through the underworld of your own psyche, to meet your own inner monsters, and discover that they were never monsters at all, but exiled fragments of your own divine potential. In myth, the hero does not slay the dragon to destroy it. He slays it to liberate the treasure it guards. That dragon is your shadow. That treasure is the self, and the battle is not fought outside you. It is fought within. This is why the world feels so loud, so busy, so exhausting, because it is full of people running from themselves. But you do not have to run. You can stop. You can turn inward. You can begin the journey that matters, the one that leads not forward, but downward. Into the roots, into the depths, into the truth. You were never meant to remain at the surface of your existence. The self is not a better version of your ego. It is the totality of who you are. Light and dark, masculine and feminine, conscious and unconscious, broken and divine. It is the union of opposites, the sacred marriage of anima and animus, the inner feminine and masculine, the receptive and the active, the intuitive and the rational. We live in a culture that splits these forces, that exalts one and denies the other. But you are both. And until you reclaim what you were taught to reject, you will remain incomplete. The anima appears in a man's dreams, not to seduce, but to awaken. She is the soul guide, the inner feminine, calling him to feel, to soften, to love, to listen. The animus appears in a woman's psyche, not to dominate, but to lead her to her voice, her logic, her power, her direction. These inner figures are not mere fantasies. They are the psychic keys to wholeness. When they are rejected, they become tyrants. When they are integrated, they become guides. And with their union, something miraculous happens. A new center is born, a new axis of identity that does not rely on the ego's constant defense or the world's fleeting approval. This center is not loud. It does not shout for attention. It is still. It watches. It knows. And when you begin to live from this place, your life changes. Not because your circumstances become perfect, but because your center is no longer shaken by every storm. You begin to choose what nourishes the soul, not just what flatters the image. You begin to say no, not from fear, but from clarity. You begin to love, not to fill a void, but to share the overflow of your being. This is what it means to become whole, not perfect whole. To be a human being, in full, scarred, real luminous. And this is why the ego is not yourself. Because the self does not need to prove. The self does not need to perform. The self simply is the shadow that rules you. There is a part of you that you do not know. It moves behind your eyes. It breathes beneath your words. It acts through your hands before you've even chosen. You do not see it, but it sees you. It is the one who reacts before you think, who sabotages what you love, who whispers when you try to sleep, and who wears your face when you're too tired to pretend. This is the shadow, not a metaphor, not a concept, but a living presence buried deep within your psyche. Carl Jung called it the thing you do not wish to be. But the shadow is not only darkness, it is potential, it is pain, it is power, and it rules you silently because you refuse to see it. What you repress does not vanish, it sinks, it festers, it grows claws in the dark. And when the time is right, It speaks through your rage, your addictions, your projections. You think you are a rational being. You think you are in control. But control is an illusion, and reason is a mask. Beneath it, the unconscious waits immense, ancient, and indifferent to the stories you tell yourself. You inherited this shadow, not just from childhood, but from centuries of fear, trauma, survival. It is collective, as much as it is personal. The wars your ancestors fought, the lies they told, the wounds they passed down in silence, they live in you. They act through you, and they do not disappear through denial. To deny the shadow is to submit to it. The man who represses his aggression becomes passive-aggressive. The woman who denies her envy poisons her friendships. The spiritual seeker who flees their sexuality ends up haunted by it in dreams and desires. The world is not full of evil, because evil exists out there. It is full of evil because we refuse to meet it in ourselves, and so it acts in secret, projecting outward what we dare not admit inward. Every time you judge someone harshly, look again. The part of them that bothers you, where does it live in you? The tyrant, the coward, the liar, the addict. These are not foreign entities. They are disowned fragments of your own humanity. The shadow is not evil. It is unintegrated, and what remains unintegrated becomes fate. You will repeat your patterns until you learn to see the hand behind the curtain. You will sabotage every relationship until you meet the part of you that fears intimacy. You will chase success until you confront the part of you that feels unworthy, and you will keep running from yourself until there is nowhere left to run. The shadow is not your enemy, it is your teacher. But it will not speak to you in polite words. It speaks in symptoms, in anxiety, in guilt, in depression, in strange dreams and broken relationships. These are not curses. They are invitations, signals from the soul that something is missing, something is buried, something is crying out to be reclaimed. The wound is where the light enters, yes, but only if you are brave enough to open it. Only if you are willing to bleed. The journey inward is not romantic. It is brutal. It is raw. You will uncover parts of yourself you wish didn't exist, and you will be tempted to turn back. But every myth tells the same story. The hero must descend into the underworld. Orpheus must lose Eurydice. Inanna must strip her jewels. Christ must carry the cross. Even Buddha faced Mara under the Bodhi tree. No light without shadow, no gold without the dragon. No healing without dissent. We have been conditioned to chase light, to worship positivity, to brand ourselves with affirmations and filters. But Jung said, one does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. You are not here to be perfect. You are here to be whole. To integrate the shadow is not to become sinless, but to become sincere. To know your darkness and hold it in your hands, not to use it, not to fear it, but to understand it, because understanding transforms. The shadow once seen loses its power to possess the child in you who was abandoned. The rage you swallowed, the part of you that wanted to scream and never did. The ambition you buried to be accepted, the lust you pretended not to feel, the pain you turned into performance. These are not your enemies. They are your exiled kings, and they will not rest until you reclaim them. Not by indulging them, not by acting them out, but by listening, by learning, by loving the parts of yourself you thought were unlovable. This is the path of inner alchemy, not the transmutation of lead into gold, but of unconsciousness into awareness. The alchemist enters the darkness, not to escape it, but to endure it, to confront chaos and forge a new center. The shadow is your raw material, your prima materia. And only through the fire of attention does it begin to melt, to change, to reveal what was hidden beneath. You cannot bypass this. You cannot meditate it away, journal it into submission, or chant it into silence. It is not your shadow that fears you. It is you who fears your shadow because it holds the truth. And the truth is that you are not who you pretend to be. You are something far more dangerous, far more beautiful. You are vast. You are complex. You are divine and monstrous and capable of becoming real. You were not born to be tame. You were not born to be liked. You were born to become conscious, to see deeply, to look at yourself with eyes that do not flinch. This is the work. This is the calling. Not success, not popularity, not safety, but integration. Jung called it individuation, and the process by which the individual becomes whole, not by eliminating the shadow, but by bringing it into relationship with the light. This is how the ego stops ruling and begins to serve. This is how the mask dissolves and the face beneath it is revealed. Not the persona, but the person. Not the role, but the soul. And that soul is not clean, not simple, not linear. It is a forest. It is a storm. It is a fire waiting to burn down the lies you've lived and light the way home. Meet the archetype. Within, there is a voice that speaks in symbols, not sentences. A current beneath your thoughts, deeper than logic, older than language. It does not ask for your attention. It commands it through dreams. You can't forget stories that haunt you, patterns that repeat across generations. This voice is not your own yet. It lives inside you. It is the whisper of the archetype, the ancient blueprint of the soul, echoing from the collective unconscious into the fragile container of your personal identity. Long before you had a name, these forces were shaping your psyche. Gods without temples, myths without books shaping how you love, how you suffer, how you rise, how you fall. You are not a blank slate. You are a living symbol carrying within you the memory of 1,000 lives. Not lived 1,000 possibilities, not chosen. And each of those lives is a doorway. Each is an archetype waiting to be remembered. You have met them already, though you may not have known it. The hero who fights for a truth larger than himself. The mother who nourishes, protects, and sometimes suffocates. The trickster who breaks rules and laughs as your plans collapse. The warrior who stands when everything else crumbles. The orphan, the magician, the lover, the sage. Each one is a facet of your inner architecture. These are not roles you play. They are energies you embody. You are not just a person. You are a theater of the gods. And whether you know it or not, they are acting through you. Every time you fall in love, it is the lover who wakes. Every time you betray yourself to fit in, it is the orphan who cries out. Every time you speak with sudden wisdom you didn't know you had, the sage is alive in you. But until you learn their names, until you see them, hear them, integrate them, they remain unconscious. And what remains unconscious controls you. This is the danger and the invitation. Because if you do not meet the archetype within, it will meet you in projection. You will marry your anima without knowing she is a mirror of your soul. You will chase mentors because you have not awakened the inner wise old man. You will fear the tyrant because you have not yet met your own inner king. The outer world becomes a canvas for the inner drama. You think you are reacting to people, but you are reacting to patterns. You think you are making choices, but you are reenacting myths. The woman who always falls for the wounded man is reenacting the story of the healer. The man who cannot commit is dancing with the poor eternus, the eternal boy. These stories are not personal. They are primordial, and they demand your attention. Not because they are flaws, but because they are invitations. The archetype wants to be known, to be seen, to be embodied consciously, not blindly. to become whole is not to reject any of them, but to bring them all into relationship. To recognize that within you is not one self, but many. A constellation of forces, some light, some shadow, all sacred. And this constellation cannot be navigated by the ego alone. The ego is too narrow, too frightened, too reactive. It wants control, but individuation asks for surrender. You must learn the language of symbol, the logic of paradox, the rhythm of the unconscious. Jung wrote that the archetype is a psychic organ, just as physical as the liver, but existing in the soul. You cannot see it, but you can feel it. In your compulsions, your callings, your obsessions, your dreams, when you are drawn to a certain myth, a certain image, a certain story. It is not random. The archetype is calling you. And if you follow it, if you dare to descend into its world, something miraculous happens. You begin to see your life, not as a series of accidents, but as a sacred drama. You begin to ask, not, why is this happening to me, but which part of me is living this? You begin to interpret the world symbolically, not literally. Depression is no longer just a chemical imbalance. It is the death of the old self before rebirth. Rage is no longer shameful. It is the warrior's cry for boundaries. Longing is no longer weakness. It is the lover calling you to risk your heart. Each emotion becomes a guide, each crisis a rite of passage. And the goal is not perfection, but integration. You are not here to be one thing. You are here to become everything you are. But to do that, you must descend. You must go beneath the mask, beneath the persona, because the persona is not who you are. It is who you became to survive. It is the mask that won approval, the identity that kept you safe. But safety is not wholeness. And behind the mask waits the archetype you repressed, the wild man you buried beneath politeness, the priestess you silenced to be accepted, the destroyer you locked away for fear of what it might break. But wholeness requires that all be welcome to the table. Even the parts you hate, especially the parts you hate, because those are the ones that hold your power. Those are the ones you must integrate to become real. You do not heal by becoming better. You heal by becoming more yourself. And that self is not one thing. It is a spiral, a cycle, a story that unfolds chapter by chapter. The hero becomes the outcast becomes the magician becomes the guide. And even the guide must die to become something new. The journey never ends. But each step forward brings you deeper into your center, and that center is not the ego. It is the self, the archetypal self, the totality of your being, the blueprint of your soul. And it is not found in success or validation or spiritual bypassing. It is found in the fire, in the descent, in the willingness to meet every part of you, especially the ones you were told to reject. The path is narrow. The symbols are obscure. The world will not understand. But the soul does not care about approval. It cares only for wholeness. It calls you inward. It calls you down. It calls you home. The dark gods of your psyche. There are gods that do not dwell in heaven. They do not shine from mountaintops or speak in the language of light. They rise from below, from the depths of the psyche, from the blood-soaked soil of forgotten dreams, from the primal chaos that lives beneath the surface of who you think you are. These are not gods you pray to. They are gods you run from. And the more you run, the more they rule you. Carl Jung called them archetypes, primordial images, autonomous forces of the collective, unconscious. But when denied, when suppressed, when exiled from conscious life, these archetypes grow distorted. They twist into shadows. They possess. They demand sacrifice. These are the dark gods of your psyche. The rejected kings, the devouring mothers, the wounded warriors, the wrathful tricksters. And they are not myths. They are your impulses, your obsessions, your nightmares, your unexplained longings. You think you're making choices, but behind you, ancient hands are shaping your fate. Every culture once knew this. The Greeks knew it when they feared the wrath of Ares and the madness of Dionysus. The Hindus knew it in Kali, goddess of time and death, crowned in skulls and covered in blood. The Egyptians etched it in Anubis, the jackal-headed gatekeeper of the underworld. These were not stories to entertain. They were mirrors of the human soul, reflections of what lives in us all. But modern man, in his arrogance, believes he has outgrown the gods. We build skyscrapers, decode genomes, map the stars, but we cannot face our own reflection, and so the gods go underground. They do not die. They reincarnate in addictions, in violence, in war, in breakdowns and delusions, and mass psychosis. Jung saw this with terrifying clarity in the madness of the 20th century. He saw how the unacknowledged archetypes erupted through ideologies, through tyrants possessed by the collective shadow. The gods do not vanish when ignored. They devour. You carry these gods within you, not as fairy tales, but as energies, some noble, some demonic, all necessary. Within you lives the destroyer, the force that tears down what no longer serves, but if repressed, turns against you and others. Within you lives the seductress, the power of erotic magnetism and creation. But if denied, she becomes manipulative, hollow, hungry for validation, the tyrant, the victim, the martyr, the witch. These are not just characters. They are psychic blueprints, modes of being that rise when the conscious mind cannot bear the truth. And the truth is, you are not in control. Not until you meet them, not until you descend into the inner underworld and confront what you have exiled. That rage you can't explain, that shame that stalks you, that deep hunger for something you can't name, all of them are doors, and behind each door, a god waits. This is not a journey for the faint of heart. To enter the realm of the dark gods is to abandon comfort, to walk into the fire of your own undoing. You will not emerge the same. Something must die. A belief, a mask, an identity. Something false must be burned away, because the gods do not grant wisdom without destruction. The old alchemists knew this: solve et coagula, dissolve, and then coagulate, break it down, then build it new. The psyche must go through this fire, this psychic dismemberment, in order to be reborn. The dark gods are not evil. They are tests. And if you survive them, not by resisting but by surrendering, you awaken a power that cannot be taken from you. You become someone real. In dreams, these gods often appear as animals, monsters, strangers, or looming presences without form. They chase, they torment. But if you turn toward them, if you face them, the dream shifts. The nightmare becomes initiation. The terror becomes teacher. Jung taught that dreams are the royal road to the unconscious, the direct speech of the soul. So listen to your dreams. Write them. Sit with them. Ask what they are showing you, not just what they mean. Interpretation is not the point. Relationship is. When you build relationship with the archetype, it stops haunting and starts guiding. The same God that once ruled you from the shadows can now become your ally. The destroyer becomes the agent of transformation. The seductress becomes the muse. The tyrant becomes the sovereign. The madman becomes the visionary. Every dark god, when integrated, becomes a force of liberation. But integration demands honesty. Brutal, uncompromising honesty. You must admit what you don't want to admit. That you crave power, that you fantasize about revenge, that you manipulate, that you lie, that you want to be adored, that you fear being nothing. And rather than moralizing these truths, you must humanize them, because the dark gods feed on repression. What you judge, they wear. What you suppress, they amplify. But what you accept, what you fully hold in the light of consciousness, loses its grip. And what once ruled you can now serve you. The fire becomes light. The dragon becomes wisdom. The wound becomes the womb. You were never meant to live only in the light. You were never meant to be pure, perfect, or pleasing. You were meant to be whole. And wholeness includes contradiction, chaos, grief, rage, lust, and wild joy. The gods do not ask for your virtue. They ask for your truth. They ask that you kneel not in worship, but in reverence to the mystery that you are. To the depths you have not yet explored, to the parts of you that speak in symbols and silence and fire. You are not here to be small. You are here to become vast, and that vastness requires descent. Descent into the unconscious, descent into myth, descent into the temple of your own soul where the old gods still wait in the dark. Thrones empty weapons, rusted eyes glowing, waiting for you to return. The mask you didn't choose. There is a face you wear that does not belong to you. A voice that speaks, but not from your soul. A life you live, but never chose. This is the mask, the persona. Not the one you designed, but the one shaped by expectations, by wounds, by the quiet violence of needing to survive in a world that demanded you become someone else. It is the smile you wear when you're breaking, the competence you display when you're lost, the charm that conceals your fear. You didn't choose this mask. It was fitted to you before you could speak. A collage of your parents' unlived dreams, your culture's silent rules, the roles you played to be loved, accepted, safe. And now, decades later, you stare into mirrors and wonder why the reflection feels hollow, because something in you knows it's not your face. Not really beneath the mask is something older, rawer, more true. But the longer you wear the mask, the more you forget the one who put it on. Carl Jung understood this dissonance. He wrote that the persona is a system of adaptation, a functional identity necessary for society. We all need masks, but the danger is not in wearing one. It is in believing that's all you are. The persona is a role. The teacher, the lover, the achiever, the rebel. It helps you navigate the outer world, but behind it lives the shadow, the unlived life, the parts you disowned to play your part. And deeper still lies the self, the totality of who you are. Unmasked, undivided whole. The journey is not to destroy the mask. The journey is to no longer be ruled by it, to see it, hold it, and then go beneath it. Because healing is not becoming someone new. Healing is remembering who you were before the world told you who to be. You learned early what was acceptable and what was not, that crying was weakness, that rage was dangerous, that vulnerability meant rejection. So you learned to smile, to please, to excel. You learned to stay quiet when you wanted to scream. You learned to be strong when you needed to fall apart. And every time you hid a part of yourself, it didn't vanish. It sank into the unconscious, into the shadow, waiting. And it shows up now in ways you don't understand. The inexplicable sadness, the explosive anger, the fear of intimacy, the need to prove yourself endlessly. These are not flaws. They are signals. They are the buried parts of you pounding at the walls of the mask, begging to be let out. This is why your outer success often feels so empty, why love doesn't satisfy, why no amount of validation can silence the voice inside that whispers, "This isn't who you really are." Because the mask cannot feel, the mask cannot love, the mask cannot be fulfilled. Only the self can, and the self is not interested in performance. It does not care if you win. It does not care if you're admired. It only wants one thing: wholeness, integrity, truth. And truth begins when you take off the mask, not in front of the world, but in front of yourself. When you sit in silence and ask, "Who am I?" when no one is watching, and dare to wait for the answer. The answer won't come from your mind. It will come in dreams, in synchronicities, in moments that shatter the illusion, in the heartbreak that brings you to your knees, in the loss that strips you bare, in the loneliness that no distraction can touch. These moments are sacred. They are the cracks in the mask. And through those cracks, the light of your true self begins to shine. The self does not shout. It does not demand. It waits with the patience of eternity. It sends you symbols. It sends you longing. It sends you suffering. Not to punish you, but to awaken you. Because only suffering has the power to make you question the mask. Only suffering strips away what is false and reveals what is real. You think you're breaking, but you're not. You're being broken open, and what emerges from that rupture is not weakness. It's the beginning of individuation, the slow, sacred process of becoming who you are, beneath all the roles, of reclaiming the parts of you exiled to the shadow, of meeting the inner child, the inner rebel, the inner sage, the inner wild one. And with each part you reclaim, you become more whole, more alive, more real. This is not the path of comfort. It is the path of fire, of descent, of death and rebirth. The persona must die for the self to be born. And that death feels like chaos, like madness, like the end. But it is the beginning of your return. And when you return, you do not destroy the mask. You wear it with awareness. You use it without being used by it. You no longer confuse the role with the soul. You can be a leader without losing your softness. You can be a healer without denying your wounds. You can be a warrior without abandoning your tenderness. Because now you are rooted in the self, not in the performance. And the self is vast. It holds contradictions. It is fierce and gentle, disciplined and wild, wounded and divine. It is not something you achieve. It is something you remember, something you uncover beneath the ruins of who you thought you had to be. You didn't choose the mask. But you can choose what to do with it now. You can let it define you, or you can let it guide you to what it hides. And if you choose the latter, if you choose to descend to feel, to confront, to remember, you will meet yourself at last. Not the self that performs, the self that is the one who waits in the quiet. The one who knows, the one who has never left you, even when you abandon them, that self is calling. And the only way to hear it is to remove the mask and listen. The power of the unconscious. There is a river flowing beneath the surface of everything you do, beneath every choice, every word, every silence. It winds through forgotten memories, ancient instincts, unspoken fears, and buried longings. You do not control it, you do not even see it, but it moves you. This is the unconscious, the unseen force that shapes your world from the inside out. And while you live, as if you are awake, most of your life is dreamed. You think you know who you are because you have a name, a story, a set of memories arranged like beads on a string, but these are just fragments, a thin crust, floating atop the ocean of your deeper being. The unconscious is not beneath you. It is beneath everything. It is not empty, it is alive. It remembers what you've forgotten. It holds what you could not bear to face. It dreams while you wake. And sometimes, if you're quiet enough, it whispers. We like to believe we are rational, conscious creatures, logical, deliberate, in control. But the truth is harder. The truth is that most of your life is guided by forces you cannot name. Your desires, your fears, your habits, your patterns. These are not entirely yours. They are inherited. They are imprinted. They are the echoes of your childhood, the shadows of your lineage, the silent influence of culture, myth, and soul. The unconscious is not just personal. It is collective. You carry not only your own story, but the story of the human race. You carry the archetypes, the gods, the old dramas that repeat themselves across time, now played through your relationships, your dreams, your inner conflicts. Carl Jung knew this. He called it the collective unconscious, the great psychic inheritance of humanity. And it lives in you whether you believe it or not. You see it in dreams, in the symbols that return again and again, the house, the child, the storm, the forest, the mirror, the serpent. These are not meaningless. They are messages in the oldest language. A language not of words, but of soul. You see it in synchronicities, those strange moments where life seems to speak directly to you, as though fate were pulling strings just behind the veil. You see it in compulsions you don't understand, reactions that feel too big for the moment, attractions that make no sense, and wounds that never seem to heal. These are not failures of logic. They are signs that the unconscious is active. And if you ignore it, it does not vanish. It grows. It takes the wheel while you look away. It chooses your partners. It chooses your addictions. It sabotages your goals because what you do not make conscious will rule you. And you will call it fate. The unconscious is not your enemy. It is your beginning. It is the soil in which your self is rooted to ignore. It is to remain shallow. To know it is to deepen, and depth is the only path to transformation. You do not grow by adding more. You grow by digging down into the hidden roots, the forgotten traumas, the unspoken truths. You must descend to rise. This is the oldest story, the hero's journey. Every myth, every initiation, every true transformation begins with descent. Orpheus into the underworld, Inanna into the realm of Ereshkigal, Christ into the tomb, Buddha under the tree facing Mara. The light is always found through the dark. And the unconscious is the dark. Not evil, just hidden, just unknown. Just waiting to be seen. To work with the unconscious is not to manipulate it. It is to enter into relationship, to listen, to dialogue, to ask what the dream is showing you, not what it means in neat categories. To see your triggers not as flaws, but as clues. To watch your projections and ask, what part of me have I disowned that now walks in the face of another? The unconscious does not speak in straight lines. It speaks in riddles, in images, in mood, in poetry. You must learn to feel it, to sit with it, to let it reveal itself in its own time. This is the work of soul. Not fast, not linear, but true. And the deeper you go, the more you discover that the unconscious is not just a well of wounds. It is a source of wisdom. It holds not only your pain, but your power, your lost gifts, your forgotten instincts, your hidden wholeness. What was buried in shame is the seed of your authenticity. What was repressed in fear is the fire of your creativity. The unconscious holds the blueprint of the self, not the ego, not the mask, but the self, your totality, your center, your inner wholeness that longs to be born. And that birth is not an event. It is a process, a becoming, a slow spiraling awakening. This is the process Jung called individuation, not self-improvement, not becoming better, but becoming you whole, real alive. And it begins when you stop trying to conquer the unconscious and start listening to it. Descend into the depths. There is a place beneath the surface of your mind that you were never taught to enter. A place not found in textbooks or sermons, nor lit by the soft glow of spiritual cliches. It is the cavern of your forgotten gods, the sanctuary of your disowned selves, the birthplace of your deepest fear and your deepest power. This place is not above you in the clouds of enlightenment. It is below dark, primal silent. It is the abyss within. And until you dare to descend into its depths, you will forever remain a stranger to your own soul. We are taught to walk the world like masks, on parade each of us clutching at a role. A title, a borrowed light, we hope will keep the shadows at bay. But the shadow does not live out there. It breathes behind your smile. It waits behind your ambitions. It whispers from the corners of your dreams, reminding you always that something essential has been buried. Not by accident, but by design, because the truth is too powerful for the fragile structures we build to contain it. Carl Jung knew this. He spoke of the unconscious not as a trash heap of forgotten thoughts, but as a realm of mythic gravity, a place where the archetypes roam like ancient titans, shaping your fate from beneath your awareness. The mother, the father, the hero, the trickster, they are not mere metaphors. They are living forces inside you, and they are starving for your recognition. But to find them, you must go where few dare to go, down inward through the veil. This descent is not a linear path. It is a spiral, a fall, a dismembering of the ego that once pretended it was the king of your castle. And as you fall, something terrifying happens. The persona cracks. The polite smile fades. The socially acceptable mask you've worn to survive begins to rot in your hands. And beneath it, something wild opens its eyes. You will meet the wolf, the serpent, the child you abandoned, the lover you betrayed, the wrath you swallowed for years until it fermented into shame. They are all here in the depths, not as punishments, but as invitations. Each shadow is not your enemy, it is your initiation. A fractured shard of the wholeness you forgot. And the only way out is through. As the ancient myths foretold, every hero must journey into the underworld, not to conquer it, but to be transformed by it, to shed the illusions of who they thought they were, and touch something raw, untamed, sacred. The hero does not slay the dragon because it is evil. The dragon is the guardian of treasure, and the treasure is the self. But beware, your culture has lied to you about the self. It told you the self is found in productivity, in status, in affirmation. But the true self is older than your name, wilder than your thoughts. It is the totality of all that you are, the light and the dark, the divine and the monstrous. And to find it, you must first endure the death of everything you mistook for you. You will know you're close when you begin to forget your rehearsed lines, when the goals you once chased feel hollow, when the praise of others becomes noise. This is the ego's death rattle, not your end, but your rebirth. Because the ego, for all its efforts, was never meant to rule. It was meant to serve the self. And the self, unlike the ego, does not seek comfort. It seeks truth. Dreams become your compass now, symbols your language. You begin to see the world not as a grid to conquer, but as a mirror of your inner labyrinth. Every person you meet reflects a part of you. The wounded child, the tyrant, the savior, the lost soul. And every conflict is an echo of the war. Within your anima or your animus, the inner feminine or inner masculine calls to you next, not as a lover outside you, but as the sacred other within. She comes in your dreams as a muse, a temptation, a haunting beauty who unsettles your rational mind. Or he comes as a dark night, a forbidden flame, the voice you repressed in the name of politeness. They are not fantasies. They are the bridge, the tension between opposites that pulls your soul into wholeness. As you descend further, you begin to hear the language of the unconscious, images, symbols, mythic patterns that speak in riddles and paradox. You no longer chase answers. You listen, you watch. You let the psyche unfold like a cosmic drama where every character is you in disguise. The tyrant is your fear of being weak. The victim is your denial of agency. The angel is your unclaimed joy. The devil, your unlived passion. And somewhere amidst this sacred chaos, you meet the self. Not as a concept, but as a presence, still immovable. Watching. It has always been there like a star obscured by clouds. And you realize finally that you were never lost, only asleep. But awakening is not bliss. It is fire. It burns away what you no longer are. It forces you to choose to betray the false gods of conformity and reclaim the ancient altar within individuation, Jung called it. The path not to perfection, but to integration. To walk as a whole being, not pure but real, not flawless but true. You are not here to ascend endlessly toward light. You are here to descend into your own depths and bring that light with you. You are not here to bypass your wounds. You are here to kneel before them and listen, because they carry the key to the kingdom within. Why you hide from yourself. You were not born afraid of yourself. That came later, after the world taught you what to reject, what to silence, what to hide behind your eyes. When others were watching, you came into this world, whole, luminous, untamed, screaming truth, into a world addicted to masks. But somewhere between your first breath and your first lie, you learned that being yourself was dangerous, too intense, too honest, too much. So you began to carve pieces of yourself away, tucking them into the shadows like forbidden relics, and each time you did, you received a reward, approval, safety, belonging. You began to confuse suppression with strength, invisibility with peace. And so you built a persona, a mask, to protect you from the world. But no one told you it would also separate you from your soul. You hide from yourself because the truth is too raw for your ego to bear. Because the buried emotions you never processed have grown fangs in the dark, and you sense them pacing just beneath your skin. Because the rage you swallowed in silence now mutates into anxiety, into shame, into self-doubt, and still you smile, still you perform, still you pretend, because pretending keeps the illusion intact. And the illusion is what holds your world together. But beneath the illusion is the thing you fear most, not failure, not rejection, but the unbearable weight of your own potential, the chaos of your unlived life. Carl Jung called this the shadow, the part of you that contains everything you exiled in order to be accepted. It is not evil. It is not broken. It is simply unknown. And what is unknown becomes terrifying when left unspoken. You don't run from the shadow because it is monstrous. You run because you know it is powerful. Because deep down you remember who you were before the world told you who to be. And that memory burns. You look into the mirror but don't see yourself. You see the composite of expectations, of survival. Strategies of roles rehearsed so long they've calcified into identity. You say you don't know who you are. But the truth is, you do. You just buried that knowing beneath years of distraction, performance, and noise. You hide behind busyness, behind ambition, behind a curated version of life that keeps the rawness at bay. But in the still moments when the noise fades and you're alone with yourself, the truth knocks quietly, persistently. The psyche does not forget what the ego avoids. And so you dream. You dream of running, of falling, of faces you don't recognize. You dream of dark corridors and forgotten places, because the unconscious speaks in symbols, not logic, and it will keep sending messages until you listen. The dreams are not random. They are invitations, portals into the parts of you that still live, even if you abandon them. The child who never learned to cry, The artist you suffocated in the name of stability. The lover you silenced to stay safe. They are not gone, only hidden, only waiting. The world rewards masks. It applauds personas. It crowns the best actor with applause. But it is the authentic that transforms the raw, the real, the broken, and becoming. And this is why you must stop hiding, because the world does not need more polished performances. It needs people who have made peace with their shadows, who have walked into the abyss of their psyche and returned with a heart still beating. The journey inward is not gentle. It will not stroke your ego or coddle your illusions. It will break you. It must, because what you call you is often a patchwork of defenses of half-truths stitched together by fear and the self. For the true self cannot emerge until the false self dissolves. This is the alchemy of the soul, to burn in the fire of your own becoming and not run from the heat. You fear the darkness within because you have been told that light is good and dark is bad. But this is a lie. In the darkness lies your depth, your wildness, your sacred hunger. The night is not your enemy. It is your womb. It is where gods are born, where souls are forged, where the ego kneels and the truth rises. And so you must descend, not to escape the light, but to become worthy of it. Healing does not come by denying the wound. It comes by entering it, by tracing the outline of your pain with sacred attention, by letting the grief speak, letting the anger move, letting the numbness thaw. You hide from yourself because it hurts to remember. But to remember is to reclaim, and to reclaim is to become whole again. You will be tempted to turn back, to numb, to distract, to pretend this journey is too abstract, too impractical. But the most practical thing you will ever do is face yourself, because the quality of your inner world shapes everything you touch. Your relationships, your work, your sense of meaning. All of it flows from the well within. And if that well is poisoned with denial, everything you build will carry its taste. This is not about becoming perfect. It is about becoming honest. Honest with your fears, with your wounds, with your deepest desires. Most people are not afraid of failing. They are afraid of succeeding at the wrong life. A life built on someone else's blueprint. A life curated for acceptance, but devoid of soul. And so they hide behind achievements, behind ideology, behind spiritual bypassing, but no mask can cover the ache of a misaligned life. To stop hiding from yourself is to return to the sacred task of becoming. It is not a linear path. It is not clean. It is not easy, but it is holy. And every time you face a part of yourself you once rejected, you reclaim power. You reclaim intimacy with life. You become a vessel for the divine mystery that longs to express itself through you. Not the you. The world applauds, but the you. The soul remembers. The voice beneath your thoughts. There is a voice inside you that does not speak in words. It hums beneath the machinery of your mind, beneath the rituals of your daily noise, beneath the endless performance of who you think you are. It does not shout. It does not beg. It waits. Timeless, ancient, patient. You hear it in the space between thoughts, in the pause after a heartbreak, in the silence, before sleep, in the stillness that follows your deepest grief. It is the voice you buried long ago to survive in a world that worships speed and punishes depth. But this voice is not gone. It has only descended into the underground palace of the psyche, where the forgotten gods still dwell, and where your soul waits to be remembered. You've been told to trust your thoughts, to believe the running commentary in your head, to build your life upon logic, strategy, and reason. But your thoughts are not always your allies. They are often echoes, borrowed scripts passed down through generations of fear, duty, and control. You were taught how to think, but you were never taught how to listen. And the voice beneath your thoughts does not speak in straight lines. It speaks in images, in intuitions, in symbols, in the ache behind your eyes when you're pretending to be okay. In the dreams that rattle your spine with truths too wild for daylight. It is the unconscious not as a passive storage of forgotten facts, but as a living realm of sacred intelligence that knows who you are. Beneath the mask, Carl Jung once said, that until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. You will think you are choosing your path, but you are being pulled by unseen forces. The unloved child within you, the shame you buried, the archetypes that haunt your lineage. They live beneath your polished identity, the persona that social costume stitched together with expectations and politeness was never designed to carry your essence. It was meant to protect you, not define you. But when the persona becomes your prison, the soul begins to whisper, first gently, then louder, until the life you built begins to crack and you find yourself staring into the void. And in that void, something begins to stir, the shadow not as darkness to be feared, but as power to be reclaimed. Everything you repress does not die. It sinks, it gathers in the depths, waiting to be faced. The anger you deny becomes fatigue, the sexuality you repress becomes anxiety. The grief you swallow becomes disconnection. You were taught to suppress, to avoid, to move on. But healing is not forward motion. It is downward, inward, into the roots, into the hidden chambers of your own mythology. You must learn to descend like Orpheus into the underworld, not to escape life, but to retrieve what was lost. This descent is sacred and terrifying, because it requires you to confront the parts of yourself that never stopped feeling. The parts that remember, the wounds you outgrew intellectually, but never metabolized emotionally. The traumas you minimized, because society told you to be strong. But the soul does not speak the language of repression. It speaks through the body, through the unconscious, through the mysterious synchronicities that appear when the psyche starts waking up. And when you begin to hear the voice beneath your thoughts, you realize it never lied to you. It just waited for you to stop lying to yourself. The unconscious is not chaos. It is a cosmos, a symbolic terrain ruled by archetypes, eternal patterns that live within all human beings, the mother, the father, the sage, the rebel, the lover, the destroyer. You are not separate from these forces. You are their stage. And when you ignore them, they possess you. You become the rage you repress, the victim you refuse to outgrow, the tyrant you project onto others. But when you integrate them, you become something else. Not perfect, but whole. Individuation is the process. Wholeness is the path. And the voice beneath your thoughts is the guide. It will not flatter you. It will not comfort your illusions. It will pull you into dreams where you are hunted, abandoned, devoured, because your psyche knows what must die for you to live. And the monsters in your dreams are not enemies. They are symbols. They are protectors of the truth you're not yet ready to face. Every nightmare is a mirror. Every fear a teacher. The unconscious does not punish, it initiates. And the initiation is this: you must become conscious of what you are. Entirely. No more fragments, no more performance, no more hiding behind intellect or charm. You must descend naked into the depths and listen to the silence you've avoided all your life. There you will meet the anima, or animus, the inner opposite. The feminine within the masculine within the feminine. The part of your soul that completes the circuit of your humanity. Not as a lover you find in the world, but as a sacred other. you discover within. This inner union is not romantic. It is alchemical. It dissolves the dualities that divide your mind and fuses them into something more ancient than words, the self. The self is not your identity. It is your wholeness, the axis around which your soul orbits. And it only reveals itself when the noise dies and the voice beneath your thoughts becomes the only voice you trust. But trust is dangerous. It means surrender. It means allowing your carefully constructed life to be dismantled. It means walking away from what no longer serves your becoming, even if it once saved you. Because survival and authenticity are not the same thing. You survived by hiding. You were praised for suppressing, but you were not born to survive. You were born to become, to unfold, to rise like a myth reborn from its own ashes. And the voice beneath your thoughts is the map, not one of directions, but of resonance. It does not tell you where to go. It draws you toward what is true, what feels alive, what evokes your deepest yes. This voice will never demand. It will only call. And your entire life will change the moment you begin to answer.